guest is super special, and I'm really excited to tell you about him. So have a seat, grab a drink of whatever it is. So coffee, whatever you're drinking. And here, I'm going to just jump in and let you know all about our guest, Adam Zucker. Adam is an independent filmmaker and editor. His most recent documentary is American Muslim from 2019, which is one of the films we'll be seeing and speaking about today. We'll be seeing some previews from it, chronicling 5 diverse Muslim Americans in New York City, dealing with the changing landscape in the age of Trump. Previous films are The Return, which we'll also be discussing, from 2014, a film about young Jews in Poland today rediscovering their Jewish identity, which was shot over a 4-year period in Poland, Israel, and the US. The film has screened at over 75 film festivals, community centers, synagogues, and universities in the US and in 13 other countries. Prior to that, Zucker released Greensboro, Closer to the Truth in 2007 about the first Truth and Reconciliation Commission held in the US, which received the Audience Award for Best Feature at the Rome International Film Festival and Best Documentary at the Dead Center Film Festival. Its associated audience engagement campaign, the Closer to the Truth Project, ran workshops and study sessions in dozens of American communities looking to re-examine their own parallel deep-seated social problems, still so relevant today, I might add. Adam produced and directed the 3rd episode of the Emmy Award-winning series Free to Dance in 2003 PBS, and he has received grants from the Sundance Documentary Fund, Jerome Foundation, New York State Council on the Arts, the Southern Humanities Media Fund, the Taub Foundation for Jewish Life and Culture, the Foundation for Jewish Culture, and many others. Adam is simultaneously an award-winning editor and has cut dozens of feature documentaries, which is a whole list, which actually I won't go into, but it's so impressive, right? Google them, and really, it's amazing. So I just am so excited for our discussion today. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam and let him take it away from there, and let's see where this goes today. Looking forward to it. Okay, hi, Adam.
Hi, Carrie. Thanks for having me here. You know, I usually travel around the country and the world a lot, showing my films and talking about them, which is something I enjoy doing a great deal. And it's certainly new for me, and which I'm beginning to do on a regular basis now, this virtual film screening or film discussion setting. So it's a little odd, but these are odd times, and I'm glad that you're all tuning in, and we'll figure it out as we go. Usually what I do is I show films and then we talk afterwards, but I'm going to show little pieces of something and kind of contextualize it. And as Carrie said, I'm an independent filmmaker. And what that means is that no one ever says to me, Adam, how would you like to go make a film about, you know, the painting of the Black Lives Matters murals and, you know, in downtown Brooklyn, or how would you like to make a film about how COVID is affecting the artistic community, or anything like that? Basically, what I do is I come up with ideas for things that or I encounter things that I feel are stories I absolutely have to tell. And then it's up to me to figure out how to raise the money to do it. And I get to do exactly what I want, which is quite a great gift. And then at the end, of course, I have to see whether anyone else in the world is interested, both as audiences or in this distribution. And, you know, it usually works out, but it takes me in a lot of different directions and in different areas, which is something that I really relish. So, and I'm also an editor, and I do the same thing with the films that I edit. I edit all different kinds of things. And I'm also Jewish. And those things, being a filmmaker and being Jewish, have always been different strands. They have nothing to do with each other. I've never worked on a Jewish film, to some degree, partially because as editor, the films that came my way were usually like Holocaust films, and obviously that's super important. I just didn't really feel like it's something that I could add something to, you know, something new to. And, you know, it was a part of my life, and it's always been a part of my life being Jewish, but it had nothing to do with my films. And then in 2008, so 12 years ago, I read a story in the New York Times about the interest in Poland for Jewish culture amongst non-Jewish Poles, which is very, very popular. It's very much in vogue. And when I read this 12 years ago, it kind of like, wow, that's amazing. You know, the most anti-Semitic place on earth interested in Jewish culture. Well, spoiler alert, Poland is not the most anti-Semitic place on earth. They have a great fascination and fetishism almost with Jewish culture. And I went there. I went to Poland for the first time a year later and went to Warsaw and Krakow and saw this amazing festival. And it was great, but it had nothing, it didn't really grab me as a story. But I met a lot of young Jewish Poles there who were struggling with what it meant to be Jewish. And these are people who had been raised Catholic. Very common story. Poland has many young Poles raised Catholic who found out either they always suspected it or their grandparents acknowledged on their deathbed that they actually had Jewish roots. And so I started following 4 women, which became a 4-year project of following them from Poland to Germany to Israel, back to Poland and New York, as they kind of figured out what it meant to be Jewish in Poland today, and got to make a film about that. So I'm not going to be showing you whole films, but I'm going to show you little clips. This is actually a trailer for that film, and it's called The Return. Let's see.
I was raised up Catholic, and when I found out we have Jewish roots, I thought like I'm the only person in Poland that experiences this, and I felt a bit lonely.
Trying to be Jewish in Warsaw is rather difficult because the community is small, because you don't have so many Jewish facilities. It's very difficult to pursue Jewish life in Poland.
Ja też będę to.
Once you decide to be Jew in Poland, it's your full-time responsibility. I think once you take on an identity of a minority, that kind of takes over your life a little bit.
This huge amount of connection to Jewish world and without many Jews around was very strange to me. I remember when I first came here and they were like, oh, who's your favorite klezmer band? And for me, klezmer is like Fiddler on the Roof, like I'm not, or oh, what Jewish music do you like? And I'm like, I don't know, Beastie Boys, like what is Jewish music?
And now you are living as a parasite. Ain't it easy living as a parasite?
Here in Europe, it's very cool to have 3 types of friends, Jewish one, black one, and a homosexual one. And if you have them, like, oh yeah, you're cool.
Do I really need to show everyone I'm a single mother? Look at me. Doesn't mean that I need to shave my head and then wear trousers and being yo and drinking vodka like a man does.
Most of us have to learn Judaism from the very beginning, in adolescence or even being an adult. It's very exciting. We feel like pioneers, when I think at the beginning of Israel, it's still this problem of Jewish coming out, let's say.
It's important to know the history, but if you're showed just death camp, that makes no sense, because the Holocaust, it's not the only part of the Jewish history.
My focus is on what it means to be a Jew in Poland, a place where there is a sort of gap, 50-year gap in Jewish identity.
The most difficult thing for me is the issue of identity. And it's really heavy on my heart because I don't know what to do with this.
So we're having little sync issues, and I'll try to deal with that. But I made that film, so it's about 4 young women who went in totally different directions, predictable, non-predictable, and it was really quite a process to get to explore that over that time. And because of that, I spent, I showed the film a lot in film festivals and all, but I ended up a lot in the Jewish world, what I call the professional Jewish world. I mean, I went to a lot of synagogues, went to a lot of JCCs, Jewish film festivals, museums, conferences, speaking a bit more with kind of professional Jews about some of the issues in our faith, and kind of got involved in a sense with, categorized a lot of film and spirituality, which is something I was comfortable with, but was surprising. But I still thought the film would be a one-off, something that I would make this one Jewish film, and even though people would say when I showed it, oh, you should make a film about the Jews of Nigeria, it'll be really fascinating, or a film about, the Jews of Bolivia. And I don't mean to belittle that, it's just I didn't have any interest in doing that. I do like doing things that are very different from each other. And, but ironically, come 2017, I started making a film that is both entirely different, but does have, some kind of similarities, I think, in a way, to The Return. And that's the film that Carrie referenced, American Muslim. So I would like to show that now, a trailer for that film, which is also 3 minutes long, which will kind of get us familiar with both those things. So hopefully we can stay in sync this time. And
I see myself as an American. I see myself as a Muslim. I see myself as a proud Yemeni American now more than ever, an unapologetically American Muslim.
Over here, the performers are going to be like Jewish.
Being born in Indonesia, I almost never met any non-Muslims in my life. And I think that is one of the most important points, being me here in America. It changed me as a Muslim.
This is our country. Yet here I am, a US citizen, can't even bring my mom to America. Because of this ban, there's life moments that gone forever. This is hurting us.
And now with Trump, the Muslim ban is really personal to me. And with my dad still living in Jordan, I understand what that means to have that family separation. You're talking about people's husbands, people's cousins, people's wives, people's children.
Really, my aim with our mosque is to kind of create an atmosphere where if a non-Muslim comes in and says, hi, I want to know what you guys doing here. And that's why I said let's come up with this concept of inviting the neighbors inside and really show them what Muslims are.
All right, let's do it. It's gonna be a family time.
I think that we're coming to a point where our community is realizing that they do have to come out and fight these policies because now they're all directly being affected.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! The Muslim ban has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! The Muslim ban has got to go! Hey!
Okay, next 4 steps. 1, 2, up, stop the Muslim ban. Got it? Okay, let's do this.
So I am in it for the long haul. We have to find ways to make Americans continue to care about the Muslim ban.
So these films are both feature-length films, 80 plus minutes, and cover a lot of territory and a lot of different, distinct people. And certainly in the case of American Muslim, it was in the moment. This was all happening as I was filming. That is the news, the protests. Sometimes I do get asked, how does a Jewish New Yorker end up making a film called American Muslim? And the answer to that is really pretty simple. 2016 election happened. I saw the election of a president who was anti-Muslim, who was singling people out because of their religion and vilifying people because of their religion. And that's not anything I ever signed up for in this country. It's not something I could really abide. I was really horrified. And, I honestly have many, many beefs with the president, but just on the level of accepting others and people who are different than you. That's what America is really all about in my book. And so I really wanted to try to add my voice to this conversation. I didn't need to go in and save anyone. This community was well capable of speaking for themselves, but I just felt for myself, I needed to kind of try to find my way into this story. And I'm a New Yorker, lived here my whole life, most diverse city in America, right? Here I am, November 2016, and I was embarrassed to acknowledge that I didn't honestly know personally any Muslims. I mean, I dealt with Muslim Americans, but there was no one in my phone book. There was no one I can call and say, hey, Jay, who should I speak to? I mean, I led a kind of sheltered life in a certain way on that element. And I said, well, I have to do something about that. And I have to go out and meet my neighbors. And to some degree, that's what the film's about. The film is about knowing people who are different than you and getting to know them and sharing that humanity with other people. So of course you only get a small hint of it here, but that's really what I set out to do. And it's an amazing process. If I go to a cocktail party, sometimes I'm shy, I don't know people, I don't feel comfortable going and talking and starting conversations. But as a filmmaker, that's my job. My job is to get to know people. And I have license to call people up on the phone and say, hey, I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm interested in, meeting you and talking. Would you be up for that? And, I have to earn people's trust. We're talking about people I'd never met before. But it means I get to go out to Queens and invite someone out to tea and just talk to them and listen. And that's an amazing process. It's not always clear where it's going, but it's the same thing with Poland. I take someone out for a drink. I could ask them all kinds of questions, and they generally, would buy into that. We weren't always happy to be filmed, but to talk and get to know them, it's like entering into a world that I really had no access to. And here in New York City, in both Brooklyn and Queens, there were neighborhoods that I'd been to. I'm a biker, I tend to get around, but I had not really spent time in. It was an amazing experience to get to enter into these worlds and try to figure out how to frame that as a story and share that with people. Because what I'm really interested in is people. That's the only thing I really like to make films about, is to tell people's stories and to get to take people that I admire and respect and bring them to, bring that knowledge base to other people. And when I would go out, and I'd go out and meet, I say I'm a filmmaker, and I suspect that people thought I was Jewish. I don't really know why. My last name is Jewish sounding. Maybe I have a big nose. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, but I gather that most people assume I'm Jewish. But I actually took it a step further, and I would kind of bring in the fact that I was Jewish in one way or another, just because I wanted people to know who they were. I mean, obviously, people realized I wasn't Muslim, and I was very respectful. And the reality is that in the Muslim community, it was a really good time to meet Muslims. People were under siege in a way, and were really very open, if you were respectful, if you were inquisitive, to kind of share their story, because I think they kind of realized it was in their best interest and their necessity to kind of be known by their neighbors, which is exactly what I was trying to do. And the fact of the matter is, I went to many mosques and many communities. In some places it didn't really click. And maybe they didn't like me, maybe they didn't like me because I'm Jewish, maybe they just didn't want to tell their story, whatever. But the number of places that were totally open to me and totally trusting of me was enormous. And trust happens over time. Television will go to Ozone Park, Brooklyn, and go in for an afternoon and do a little story about the mosque there, and that's great. But what I do is I go back there 30 times, and I go there many times without filming, and I go to the mosque, and I talk to people on the street, and I hang out, and I talk to people after the mosque, and I go to the women's section, and people come to know me. They don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but at least, I'm open to questions, just like I'm questioning them. So it's kind of a dialogue and a conversation and a communication. And the people that I'm really focusing on in the film, they really have to come to trust me. But that trust is just so significant that without that, I have nothing. I mean, there's no film at all. So that's how I set out to make things, just to get to know people better and then to try to find a story by which it can all kind of make sense over 80 minutes, which is challenging, but wonderful.
Adam, I wanted to interrupt you for a minute
Sure.
while it's in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I watched both these films and they were just like, it's like reading a book and you don't put it down. It's just like, so they're elegant and they're informative and they're emotional. They're just a well done film. And so thank you for that. How would people now get to watch these who are now listening to this conversation? Maybe, and by the way, let me just remind people who are maybe coming in a little late to this conversation, this YouTube video will be up on the Gordon JCC YouTube site. So you can just go to YouTube, Google Gordon JCC or search Gordon JCC, and this will come up so you can watch the previews that Adam shared, but it would be great to know where they could watch if they want to see the entire film, both of the films.
Yes, well, thank you for the kind words. Yeah, I'm much more interested in people seeing the films than listening to me talk, given a choice. And each film has a website by which there are links by which you can, rent, buy, stream the film. So those two places are the returndocumentary.com and also AmericanMuslimFilm.com. Or if you Google Adam Zucker, documentary filmmaker, those should be the first things that come up. And through there's contacts and there's links to watch it. Not instantaneously, but pretty quickly. And I do encourage you to check out those stories because they're much more articulate and mannered and crafted than our casual conversation here.
And while we're on, so in this conversation, I think you and I just previously spoke about this, that you might be able to share, even though people haven't seen the films, but the link between the two films that you now, after making them, have discovered about these two films, like specific points maybe.
Yeah. Well, I kept on referring to the fact that I like to do different things, and that's not just for variety. I mean, the reason for that is that you want films to be distinct and unique and kind of their own thing. And, if you do a franchise of movie, whether it's editor or filmmaker, it becomes a little formulaic and you start using the same problem-solving techniques. And so I've found over a couple of decades, it's best to artificially make sure that each thing is as different as possible. So for me, in my mind, starting out, once I felt, gosh, I have to tell this story, I thought, well, the last film, The Return, involved my traveling back and forth to Poland, which is like an expensive and kind of serious undertaking. You have to plan and schedule. I said, so let's do it differently. I'm just going to be taking the subway to Brooklyn, all the equipment will fit on my back and I don't have to plan at all. I can just at the spur of the moment go out there. That was a distinct difference, which led to a difference of storytelling. The Return, because it was happening in Poland and I had a fantastic cinematographer, cost a fair amount of money relatively, and I had to raise that money, which I was successful at doing. But the cost of that is it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of delay and time and intervals to raise money, get grants and things like that. And I knew that with American Muslim, that the Muslim ban was happening as we spoke. And I felt very driven to get that film done as soon as possible. So I shot it myself. I never shot a film before, but I do know what I'm doing. And I had a crew of one, just me, to try to get it done less expensively, but also quicker. And Judaism is obviously something I know something about. I have some credibility in meeting Jewish people, not can we, impress them with my knowledge of Talmud. That's not what I mean. It's just that they do understand, like identity-wise, that I get what they're talking about. And with Islam, it was totally different. I did know a fair amount, but I don't profess to. And I was an outsider. So those are ways in which they're totally different. But then when it comes down to it, even though the American Muslim is a little bit more political in terms of following this immigration issue and a ban, an illegal ban, they are about religious minorities and the identity of being a religious minority. And it's funny because so I kept on saying, oh, they're so different because of their means of production. But when it comes to storytelling, I think there's a lot of similarity. And there's something that came up while I was filming American Muslim. Debbie Almontazer, who you'll see in an upcoming clip, is a veteran activist, Yemeni American. She was an educator. You can Google her. She's like very significant. And I said to her, I said, Debbie, you know, everybody that I speak to, they ask me, well, what's with the, you know, treatment of women in Islam? And so, you know, so let me ask you, like, do you feel like a secondhand citizen, or do you feel that you don't get equal rights in Islam or something? And she said, you know, you guys are in separate places in the mosque. I can't even see you. There are separations like in an Orthodox synagogue, of course. And she said, that's not the case at all. She said, you know, that her modesty with other people is important, her physical modesty, and therefore when she's praying, she doesn't really want to be with men. Not that it's a choice, but she said, you know, from the very beginning of the faith, the men and women were together at the mosque, that the rules that have been set in place separating men and women in Islam were created by men, and they were created by men for a reason. And as she was telling me that, I was just really tickled because 10 years ago, when I was in Poland talking to Kasia Czenegarowa, a young Jewish Polish feminist who felt very strongly about the limitations of being a woman in Orthodox Judaism, she said, you know, there's these rules of halakha, and I understand why they exist, but they were created by men. They're not created by God. They were created by men as rules to keep things separate. And I don't want any part of it. And just for me, the knowledge of like Debbie's take in Brooklyn of the separation of men and women in Islam, and Kasia's, her take on it in Orthodox Judaism, I mean, there is a lot of similarities between those religions. And in fact, of course, you know, interfaith alliance is now a super big thing right now. I know there's people from the Children of Abraham here, and I actually say this is the golden age of Jewish-Muslim alliance, and we'll refer to that in the next clip I'm going to show shortly, which is something I came upon but didn't really expect. I must say I didn't know much about, and of course things like the Salam Shalom Sisterhood were getting some attention after the election, and other organizations like that. But when I went out into the streets and protests and saw the progressive Jews that were standing in solidarity with Muslim rights groups, and vice versa, after the killings of the Tree of Chaim synagogue in Pittsburgh, and all my newfound Muslim friends and the organizations I was dealing with all wrote to me in solidarity after that tragedy. There's just so much intersection between those two things, between Judaism and Islam, and they are, of course, the two closest religions, because we as Jews are the older stepchildren or stepbrother, stepsister of Islam, in fact. So just on that level, those religions really are kind of interwoven and unique, but related, and all things which I learned while making the film. So
I just wanted to intercede here as well, because being in Nashville for 27 years, and really, I mean, you know, it's a Jewish community of what, 11, 12,000 people. That's pretty small. It's like, it is being a Jew in the South is still an extent to being a minority. And I've come to understand how living here and amongst other minorities, and especially a Muslim community that's growing, there's a camaraderie and also really a fellowship that's developing as well. And it's so encouraging to me to realize, and I wish that, you know, would come to light, and which it does through your film, that I wish that people realize there's such right now, there's so much division happening, and yet really in real life, it feels like so much of the opposite is happening as well. It just doesn't seem to get into the light of day, currently, but it is happening because when you live it, I mean, when things have happened here within the Jewish community, one of the first responses we get are from the Muslim community or the Indian community, other minorities. They're all like, we're with you, we're here, what can we do for you? So, and it was brought out in your film as well, so I'll let you show that clip when you're ready to, but I just want to point it out because it's happening all over the country. I just feel like we just don't hear about it these days. And when you hear about the positive, that encourages more positive. So I'm hoping that our discussion will, bring that enlightenment into the world as well.
Yeah, well, let me show a clip from the film, which speaks for itself. The Indonesian man speaking is Imam Shamsi Ali. He's a world-renowned figure. Indonesian American. I think he pretty much speaks for himself. I think I'll just show that one clip and then maybe we'll go to something else after. So here is another piece from the film.
That's the reason I build interfaith works, because I do believe that that's what religion is all about. It's about working with other people around you, building partnership, cooperation.
It's not sharing right now.
For a better world.
This again, my bad.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
And that's the reason I build interfaith works, because I do believe that that's what religion is all about. It's about working with other people around you, building partnership, cooperation for a better life, for a better world to live together.
So just so you can see what it looks like.
In fact, after this past election, it's truly a reminder for Muslims that we are all in this, and we need to change the way we see one another.
Thank you so much for being here. Of course. What makes what is happening today different than what's happened in the last 17 years is the fact that we had established a wide network of interfaith partners, immigrant groups, and social justice groups. And they were ready and available to basically stand and support the Arab and Muslim communities. For example, right after the election, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum reached out and she's like, how are you holding up? Well, what is it can I do? What can my community do? And I said to her, I think right now more than ever, people need to show up for the Muslim community.
Assalamu alaikum. Oh, blessings to you. Good job. Welcome, welcome. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, there are some folks who are here for the first time, so I'm going to ask Rabbi James to go over what we do and the greetings we use.
If you don't already know this, many of you do, some of you don't, CBST has been coming to the Islamic Center at NYU every Friday since the inauguration to welcome our Muslim neighbors to their Friday afternoon service.
Thank you, Shalom. Thank you so much.
So I've been coming down here probably twice a month since January of 2017. Knowing my history as a Jew, my family history, like there's an entire branch of our family that we don't even know who they were, that disappeared after the war. And it just breaks my heart to think that 50 years from now, 70 years from now, there is a fourth generation Syrian American girl saying, well, there was that whole branch of my family that disappeared. I know this is not itself fixing the world. And at the same time, with all the terrible things happening in the world, having these moments of coming together, it's been incredibly, incredibly moving.
So that Jewish community congregation, Beit Simchat Torah, has been walking the walk of interfaith activity for years now. And one thing I do with this film that's very important to me before the world stopped a couple months ago, is I was doing a lot of interfaith screenings at synagogues, bringing mosques to the synagogues, and at mosques where I bring church groups or partnering church groups and Jewish groups to the synagogue, getting people together and, showing the film and having conversation. And I had an amazing screening at the Islamic Center, NYU, which is a remarkable place, incredibly progressive, incredibly diverse Islamic community, which is where they were, CBST was rallying in front of. And I brought CBST, they were the co-sponsor of that event. So there were about 150 people there, maybe half and half, or there were more people from the Islamic community. But it was really wonderful because so many people who had been coming into the NYU building for weeks and months now, and seeing the supportive gay Jewish community outside, finally had the opportunity, actually, besides just shaking their hand, to kind of talk about the film and have food afterwards. It was just fantastic.
So that leads me to a question I have for both these films, although American Muslim is very current. What is your follow-up? What is your follow-up with both these films?
Mm-hmm. Well, once upon a time I made films and I didn't really think about what would happen afterwards. And I was relatively fortunate. They showed it, festivals, television, all that stuff, which is great. But I would say at this point in my life, I make films in order to communicate with people. And on a certain level, and it's kind of unconscious, I kind of realized at some point that this film wasn't for the Muslim community. This film was for the non-Muslim community, which of course is still 97% of the United States. Not that they would all see it, but I really wanted people that did not know these communities and did not know this world to have a better sense of it. And I really wanted, whether Jewish or not, that's not important, people who are perhaps supportive of Muslim rights or of everybody's rights, but still didn't know their neighbors, to have an opportunity to do that, to really get to know what was going on. So I do show this film in Jewish settings a lot. I show it in church settings. And I can tell you that what's been particularly gratifying, in addition to people who are non-Muslim who relate to the movie and who learn a lot and kind of feel connected, is that when I do show it in Muslim communities or the Muslim audiences that come, they're particularly gratified about the movie. And they're particularly pleased that not I, Adam Zucker, but I, non-Muslim filmmaker, made this film about them with respect and sensitivity and wanted to share that story with the world. And I don't think that I'm special or anything, but I do think I have access to an audience like this, that I was invited to show to the Gordon JCC. And not that you wouldn't listen to a Muslim filmmaker, but perhaps, with my face, you would kind of be able to connect to it a little bit differently. So I go to schools, I go to colleges, I go to places where it means a lot to me to have different communities come together and the dialogue afterwards. And now my struggle, if you will, is how do I do that in the digital realm, which is a little different because I'm not going anywhere. But on the other hand, it does allow me in the middle of my workday to kind of stop for an hour and talk to people in Nashville. So that's very efficient. It's just not as personable.
So I had some questions. Maybe you answered these to a certain degree so far in your speaking. So what, for both these films, in any order, what has been the most rewarding experience so far in your work with each of these films, and what has been the most challenging aspect to making these films, to making each of these?
Yeah. Well, on a filmmaking level, what's challenging is I edit my own movies. I mean, I'm an editor. I've edited dozens of movies. But it's hard to edit your own films. I mean, it's just for a couple of reasons. One is there's only one brain in the room, and the more brains, the better. But also, it's very hard to have objectivity. And with American Muslim, it was really hard because I was shooting it as well. So there was really only one brain in the room. And I think ultimately I'm a bit of a control freak, or else I wouldn't find myself in these frustrating or challenging situations. But in other parts of my life, I work with many people, and it's a collaboration, and that's a different kind of process that I also find rewarding. So what was hard about American Muslim was balancing the intimate human stories and the important political story to try to get across to people who have probably forgotten, and I don't blame anybody in the audience who has forgotten, that there is still a Muslim ban. The Muslim ban is still the law of the land. And we still live in a country where American citizens are not allowed to bring their immediate family members to live with them because of their religion. I think when it comes to slogans and typecasting and headlines, people lose sight of the immensity of that, particularly in the Yemeni American community, which Yemen is a terribly war-torn country. People are trying to bring their grandmothers out of harm's way, their uncles, their children, and they can't bring them here. And they're United States citizens just like you and I are if you're a citizen. And that to me is so terribly wrong. So I want people to know that. And for me to get to maybe reframe the discussion or get to open their eyes, that's very important. I know that's not really answering the question, but I guess I would say what has been most gratifying is, as I said, to get reception. You know, I'm very sensitive to being an outsider. I don't pretend to be anything I'm not. I don't pretend to speak for other people. This is not my story. I'm being given the gift of trying to tell someone else's story, and I have to do justice to that. And when people receive that with love is the only word that I can use, that means the world to me. So that was honestly surprising to me. Not that I thought people wouldn't like it, but I just didn't think it would really mean much to them because it's their story. So that's been great.
Both these films, they were so intimate, and that's what I really loved about both of them. The people that you showed it felt very authentic and genuine, and I agree with you. I think that only comes with trust. That was really a highlight in watching your films, and when I was speaking with Annalise a few weeks ago in our interview, I recalled when I was studying lyric writing in New York City with Sheila Davis, what we learned, and we studied Stephen Sondheim, but what we learned in that, which was a really good life lesson creatively, was when things are most personal, they're most universal. And so when you really get down to showing a person's life, you really see the big picture so much clearer. And that's what came across in your films. We do have a question from Nashville, from Michael Whitney. So first of all, he said, he commented on the last clip, said it gave him goosebumps. And his question is, what are the usual responses that you get when you talk about the film around the country?
Well, I've referred to that to some degree. That's a good question. I mean, I do get, to put it in the most simplistic and embarrassingly simplistic terms, I do get a lot of people saying, wow, you know, Muslim Americans are just like you and me. And, you know, that's true and not true. Obviously, there's differences, just like there's differences between New Yorkers and Nashville people, but of course, we're all human beings. So that's something that comes across a lot. And, you know, as I said, I was embarrassed to acknowledge to myself that I didn't really know any Muslims here in New York and living here in New York. But I think that's fairly common. I think it tends to be fairly common as I show the film, that's what I get from people, is not so much, when I show the return, people say, oh, my grandparents left Poland, or we're from Poland, or I've been to Poland, and that's all great. When I show American Muslim, it's usually, I've never been in a mosque. I didn't know what these people do. I didn't really know personally any Muslim Americans, and that was a moving story. And you know, that means a lot to me to kind of open up a window into that world. And the political side is a side of it, but I actually want to show a clip which has sort of nothing to do with politics. I mean, one of the guys in my film, who's a good friend now, is Mohammed Bayi. Mohammed is Algerian American. He's about 32 years old, does amazing, what he calls charitable work. We don't use the word charity so much in the nonprofit sector anymore, but I don't mean to get down on him, but he's doing amazing social services work. And I put together 2 scenes of him and his group. His group is called Muslims Giving Back, but it's really just Muhammad. There's people who work with him, but it's just his brainchild. And they do a variety of activities, but here's one of the activities that they run, which is called Project Transform. It speaks for itself. There's 2 different scenes that are, in fact, kind of a parenthesis. They're 30 minutes apart in the film, but I put them together. It's about 6 minutes long, but I think you'll really enjoy seeing something about what Mohammed Bayi is up to in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Whoops.
Look at all these like cameras.
Let's show you Mohammed and not something else. My bad.
Hey. Alrighty. We've been doing Project Transform for almost about 3 years now, and this is probably the 27th, 28th family we've been helping. So it's been quite a ride, I would say, but it's probably one of the best projects that we have because this is the only one that literally directly impacts and changes the lives of people. Problem for refugees is that, they're fleeing literally a war. But then it's like they're coming to a society where there's Islamophobia and all this political thing going on, end up by themselves. So we always hear through the word of mouth. People always come to us, listen, I know this family that needs help, I know this, I know that. So we go, we investigate, see that if this is like a doable project. I'm just gonna ask simple questions. I'm gonna edit everything later on, and that's it. So question number 1 would be, where in Syria did you guys live? Where in Syria?
Aleppo.
Aleppo?
Mm-hmm.
And when did you leave Aleppo?
In 2012. لا 2012.
2012.
2012 طلعنا من سوريا جينا على تركيا وضلينا 4 سنين ونص بعدين جينا لهون.
Alhamdulillah, you did escape it and stuff.
You know, we had very hard in Turkey. We always were like worrying about the rent, the food. It's really were very hard time.
Right. So now since you came to New York, what is the number 1 thing that you find that's been extremely difficult?
The most difficult thing is the house rent.
How much of a help would that be if someone helps you out for 1 year?
It will be like really great. We can stand on our feet and know like this country better and improve our language, get a good job.
So we do what we can. And then December 3rd, inshallah, that's where we're gonna hopefully do the project.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm just gonna take some pictures of the apartment just to see what we need and everything. But it's gonna be nice. It's always better than my apartment. Let me take the room. And one from here. Perfect. This we got, thank you.
Third, you will start like...
Yeah, it's 1 day. You guys get out of here at 10 a.m., come back maybe 5 o'clock, and then you'll see the apartment.
I remember her for about programs in the
We
car.
used to watch like programs and say
It's like that.
Imagine like we did this.
It's like that. It won't be that crazy. You know? They got big budget, we don't. But it'll be a big difference, inshallah. You guys, to us all. I do the easy job. Others do the hard job, they give their money. So to me, those are the special people. So call me if anything, any question, and then I'll keep going. Allah, habibi. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. It's gonna be a nice exercise to their floor.
Somebody moving in here?
No. We're just renovating their apartment.
Oh, renovating the apartment?
Yeah,
Very good.
they got new furniture and stuff. Yeah, they're refugees. I don't know if you've seen them. It's a single mother with 3 kids.
Refugees from where?
Syria.
Oh, from Syria.
Yeah.
All right.
But it's very hard for them. No furniture. The mom was sleeping on the floor. So we basically gathered some money together, and we're here today to renovate their apartment. Yeah, I'll get it for you. Hey.
Thank you so much. And keep
No
up
problem,
the job,
brother.
man.
You too, brother. Thank you for your support, brother. All right. Almost there, boy. You're almost there, man. You don't want to... It's very easy. Pick it up slowly. Yeah, I got you. No. The wood thing is narrow. You see, if we constructed an elevator...
That's all the squats.
We got a lot of space here, though. Ready? Still heavy, Yeah. You get the sofa comes right here, right? Okay, there you go, Jack. That's it. Cool. What?
That screw doesn't even belong there. Like, how could you put some?
I did not put it there.
I know, but I'm just
we
saying.
can hang something.
We don't have to hang anything there.
You have to put something over.
You can't put anything there.
The clock.
But you can't put it that high. You got to take that screw down.
Let's check it.
Painting
Come on.
middle.
Yeah.
That's an acoustic painting.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it should be on this side.
I feel like people can hit their head if it's here. It looks nice.
No, it doesn't. It's supposed to be right here. To be this high.
It's high, William.
This high.
You can't even reach there. You're supposed to put stuff there.
It's supposed to be this high.
Hangers. It's mad work.
That's why I told you don't do this one, because you never do it right.
There's nobody else, homeboy. Not much of a choice now.
Well, it's not going out then.
Now, how
You're
would I
just
do?
gonna keep putting holes in the wall.
Why not? They come from Syria. They're used to holes in the wall. Come on.
Wow, that's not nice to say.
A little insensitive joke there. Straight?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Wow, we agree on something.
Good job.
Oh my God.
Good job. High five.
Wow, man.
Good job.
This marriage is going to be saved after all.
Oh my God. I'm so proud of you. Thank you, honey.
We'll make it look pretty. Everything here. All right. Looking good. Clock right here. Okay. Looks good. This is it. Come in. Just come in when you're ready. I want to show you how it looks. I'm going to show you guys your bedroom.
So perfect. This is different.
It is a different house, I'm telling you. It is.
Oh my God, I can see so much.
Oh, this is jealous.
Anytime. This is the last surprise. I know it's corny, but for the next year, you guys are gonna get $750 from us every month for the rent.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I don't know to laugh or cry. That scene was so funny between the husband and wife, and then oh my God, it was like that was awesome.
So I hope it's clear. The first scene was maybe a month or so before the second scene. They did need to raise the money and then go get the furniture, but yeah. So Mohammed Bayi does stuff like this all over. He does food banks for Latino people in the neighborhood. He does a food drive every Saturday night in Herald Square, all throughout Ramadan while everything was locked down. There were no public congregations during Ramadan this year. And he, as with other communities, said Ramadan this year will be a year of giving. And they had a food truck that were going out every single day to the community. At the end of the day, of course, no eating during Ramadan. So he does a lot of activities, and I'm happy to get to share some of what his life is and his activities are with other people.
One of the things that stood out to me watching the film was when that scene where he was saying he's just living paycheck to paycheck, and it's just overwhelming how many people are in need. And the film is just very poignant on so many levels. So I feel like I could just keep talking about both these films for like hours more, and we're running out of time. So I think it's time to kind of wrap up it's the beginning, I feel, of a conversation, which is a good wrap up because, it is the beginning. It's always the beginning of a conversation, right? So how would you like to wrap it up? I'll throw the ball in your court.
Mm-hmm. Well, in watching that last scene, I talked about how when I'm making this film as an outsider, which I was and am, my great-grandparents were born in this country. Right. Well, yeah, my grandparents, excuse me, were born in this country. My great-grandparents were Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews. Yet I've always felt like an Ashkenazi Jew. That's definitely my cultural roots. I mean, I'm American. I'm very comfortable here. You know, this is where I live. But I'm a product of immigrants, and I'm a product of the immigrant experience, and that's very integral to my upbringing on many levels. And you know, there's a lot going on in this country to try to close borders, and we don't need other people here. And that's where I came from. And that's where everybody I know came from. They came from someplace else. So if we talk about, I got very personally involved in the story of Muslim Americans, which is a very first generation community in general, wanting to make their claim to being Americans, which they feel very strongly about. They feel more strongly about being American than I do. I take a lot for granted. That's my affinity, and that's my connection to this story. And I hope that's something that we can all kind of share. And I think as Jews, many of us who are descendants of people that came to this country from somewhere else, I hope we can kind of like connect with that.
So I just wanted to read something we had from a chat from Michael. He said, we have a mirror in Nashville, family of Abraham at Islamic Center of Tennessee. A Muslim lady asks, what do you do at a synagogue? Can I come see for myself? So we do have a mirror community here as well to your film. And just to so a little bit about you in the few minutes we have left. So, I mean, all of this is all about you on some level because you have created this dialogue for everybody. Do you have any projects in the works that you're, are you giving birth to anything right now?
Well, I like to say that I'm as a filmmaker, I'm a monogamist. I make a film and I stay very connected with it for a period of time because it's very hard to make a movie, but it's even harder, it's just as important to nurture its way out into the world. There's a lot of stories out there, there's a lot of media, and I do feel there's an audience for my films, and it's really important to me that I reach them, and it's really important to me that I communicate with them. So while I'm editing a film, which I have been for a year, which is on something totally different, and not that I don't want to talk about that, I spent a lot of energy getting this film out there, and I was very happy with what was happening until mid-March 2020. One thing I was doing was I was working with voter registration drives in Michigan and Wisconsin that were specifically targeting Muslim American communities. We were going to be showing pieces of the film, maybe the whole film, to try to get them activated and get them energized to register to vote. Muslim American communities are fairly underrepresented in the voter registration roles, so that's something I felt really strongly about. And interfaith work is something I really, be able to talk to other Jews and non-Jews about this story. So that's what I actively work on, and what I'm trying to crack the nut of now is how to do that from afar. So it's a learning process.
Well, you did a great job today, I have to say, and I hope that when all of this, when the world opens up again, that we can be with each other, that you'll come to Nashville. And I have a feeling our community would love to have more discussion with you and share your work. So thank you so much, Adam. It really was a very meaningful afternoon for me, and I hope for everybody watching as well. And take care to you and your beautiful family, and speak soon, okay?
Okay, well, thank you for joining me here in Nashville. And again, the two websites are AmericanMuslimFilm.com and TheReturnDocumentary.com. Or if you search by my name, you'll find them also. And if you're interested in seeing them, hit the contact link. It'll go directly to me, and we'll make it happen. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.